Hi everyone, I'm Larissa Russell of Creative You, and I'm your host of the Creative Soul Healing Podcast. Here's where we talk about the connection between creativity and healing by interviewing amazing creatives, spectacular healers, and inspiring people who have used creativity in their healing. What does it mean to be creative? What is creativity? You don't have to write a best-selling book or paint a masterpiece or even play in a rock band. Creativity is in everything that we do, in the ways we think, in the way we run a business. In our everyday lives, we are creative all the time. Let's talk about how we are creative and how creativity helps us heal mentally, physically, and emotionally, right now on the Creative Soul Healing Podcast. So, hi everyone, Larissa Russell from Creative You, and we're here for another episode of Creative Soul Healing. And I have Dai Manuel from Bali with me today. Dai is a super dad, dating his wife with a lead-by-example way of living and a contagious personality who is on a mission to positively impact 1 million role models around the globe to lead a functionally fit life through education, encouragement, and community. Digital thought leader and author, distinguished Toastmaster and keynote speaker, former partner and chief operating officer of a multi-million-dollar retail company, and a sought-after lifestyle mentor and executive performance coach. Dai knows the struggle of the juggle and keeping his health and happiness a priority. He models his work based on 5 F's: fitness, family, faith, finances, with an overarching roof of fun. Built on a rock-solid foundation of health, nuggets of wisdom and inspiration to take action to be your best self are guaranteed when you connect with Dai. So welcome, Dai.
Well, thank you, Larissa. It's a pleasure to connect with a fellow Canadian. Even though we're across the globe from one another, it's
I know.
you can't get Canada out of us, can we?
No, it's true. Once a Canadian, always a Canadian.
Heck yeah. Well, it was interesting. Last night, I host a weekly men's group, and it's called Mentorship Mondays and dinner and discussion. And last night, I had like 8 Canadians around that table of 25, which was amazing. We took over here in Bali, of all places. Yeah, it was wild. It was really cool. Really cool.
That's where we all run to, I think.
Yeah.
Run to the warmer weather.
That's definitely, I'm guilty of that one for sure.
So can you share with us some of your story and your path and how you got to where you are today?
Well, I always wonder, where should I begin? Well, let's just put it this way. I came into the health and wellness industry out of a passion. But it wasn't a passion I was born with. And in fact, I didn't come to it naturally. I was, from the age of 9 to 14, the doctor, our family GP, I remember being in the room when he looked at my mom and said, "Your son's morbidly obese." And morbidly obese, it means you have a body mass index of over 40. And you can imagine at age 14, I was quite large, and it didn't happen overnight. I mean, Einstein says compounding interest is one of those most powerful forces in the universe. Well, also negatively compounding habits, I would argue, to be equally as powerful. And over 5 years of just eating poorly, not exercising, playing a lot of video games, and really not focusing on my health as a priority, I gained a lot of weight. And, to date myself, I'm 43 now. Back then, when I was in my state of unhealth, childhood and obesity weren't usually associated in the same sentence. It wasn't like it is today. We have a global epidemic on our hands when we look at the state of the health of the world. And, going through that transformation, it didn't happen, again, overnight, but it was a 20-month process of just educating myself on what do I need to do to prioritize my health. And started eating a little bit differently, really thought about what do I need to do to fuel my body for the life that I want to be leading. Started asking myself, how can I move my body to get my health started again and reconnect with that, inner boy, if you will, and help him be confident again. And so it took 20 months. But going through that transformation, I learned a lot. And I felt very wise at that young age, and I started to consult people. They would ask me, how did you do that? A lot of my parents' friends were asking, how did you do that? And so I found myself engaging in these types of conversations that were very mentorship-oriented conversations, and it got me excited about the wellness space, that I could help people facilitate these types of transformations. And that sort of got me started, down this path of health and well-being. But I've had lots of, we'll call them sidetracks, where things have not gone, things, I've struggled with an autoimmune disease that's chronic. I've dealt with alcohol and other substance abuses, as well as a few other hiccups along the way. And I attribute this. I worked so much on the outside based on one of my motivations was I wanted a girlfriend at age 15, you know, and that was this external goal. But I worked really on the exterior. I didn't do any inner work. And that didn't happen until I got into my early, well, about 30, 31. I started to really turn the focus back. And so it's been a lifelong journey, and I feel like it's just getting started, a new chapter, and ended up here in Bali 2.5 years ago, after I quit my career 5 years ago, and my wife quit hers. And yeah, Joseph Campbell, he's the one that's coined the hero's journey and inspired George Lucas to write Star Wars and a lot of other amazing writers. This journey that keeps recurring in myth and in stories, and its parallels to our own lives is clearly there. And he always says, as long as you're following your bliss, you're walking the path ultimately to maximize joy, happiness, fulfillment, and ultimately that sense of purpose in your life. And so I just like to tell people now, like, everything I've always done has been following my bliss. It's just sometimes I got a little detoured.
Right. Oh, that's excellent. And so what does healing with creativity mean to you?
Well, I believe that we're all creatives. And I know I've got some friends that are really analytical, very data driven, and there's creativity in that too. I look at some of the top mathematicians and scientists and just neuroscientists. And yes, they deal with a lot of what we would most likely say is factual based on their experience with the system that they're in and the amount of knowledge and wisdom that's been gained over the last 150 years. But there's even creativity in that. And it's, so to me, exercising the entire brain and really getting clear with what we want from a self-care perspective, I get a lot of enjoyment from writing. Also just reflecting, and letting my mind play movies sometimes, very purposeful, life-based movies, and envisioning the potential future. I'm not saying that I spend a lot of time in that, but I get a lot of enjoyment from that kind of visionary work. And so for me, it's an important part of my overall well-being. As much as a lot of people hear fitness, they automatically think, oh, work out at the gym to get your body fitter. And I challenge that idea. It's the mental fitness, the spiritual fitness, is financial fitness. I mean, we have to be fit, healthy in so many areas in our life. And so creativity is just one of those avenues I feel to really work on that inner person, that true person of who we are. And that gets expressed in so many different ways, but I find creativity is one of the purest ways to express it.
Right. No, that's absolutely true. And do you think there's a driving force that inspires you? And can you explain that?
Oh, yeah. We have to be honest, right? I mean, there's two fairly strong forces in the universe that seems to propel us or attract us, and that tends to be fear and love, right? And when I look at some of my initial motivations, they were always in reaction to running away from something, So I'd be lying if I didn't say it was fear-based. Some of my inspirations, which is weird, but when you really reflect on it, and I've spent a lot of time reflecting on this, I realized I was just avoiding a lot of certain things rather than embracing a new potential, a new opportunity, like just the say, like the stamina, the energy, the confidence I would have gained by being healthy and using that as my motivation. It was the idea of death, those suicidal thoughts and me being afraid of death that said, okay, well, you got one of two choices. You can either end this and move on, or, wherever that may take you. That scared me a lot more than the idea of change. Right. And so that sort of sparked that initial change. There's a saying that, when the pain of change is far less than the pain of not changing, we're probably ready to make a change. And I've seen that repeat itself a few times in my life. And so I guess it's all about reframing some of those fear-based moments and really looking for the positive. And, people talk about growth mindsets and being able to look at things with those tinted glasses, as they say, those rose-tinted glasses. And it's definitely something I try to do, but I will be honest, sometimes those fears, those concerns, what would happen if I don't make the changes that I want to make, those scare me far greater, and it gets me ready to move,
Right. So that leads us right into how has a past pain informed your life purpose? And how do you specifically want to contribute to life now?
Well, I hinted that I run men's groups, and I really like working with other men, all ages, but specifically people that are find themselves at a crossroad in life. I think you can probably reflect on your life, Larissa, and very clearly there's probably been moments where you could have gone one way or gone the other, and you chose a certain path based on where you were at that time and based on everything that got you to that point. And so when I reflect on my life, I mentioned it wasn't until my 30s I started to really start asking some hard questions, and like, what do I want? And not what I want for dinner, not what I want to watch on TV, but like, what do I want for my life? And those are startling questions. They're not necessarily questions we think about every day. And so I found myself asking those questions. And what kind of man do I want to be? What kind of father do I want to be? What kind of husband? What kind of community leader? And I started realizing that a lot of the visions of who I wanted to be and actually how I was leading my life day to day were in complete contrast. And so there was depression, a lot of anxiety. I abused alcohol, which often led to narcotics and not being a good husband, one fateful morning, my wife, she was really upset. I'd been on an all-night bender and out with my friends, and I saw it with my friends. And, this is a regular pattern for me, was coming back at whatever hour and going to bed, passing out, and then just asking forgiveness in the morning and saying, "Oh, I won't let that happen again." And sure enough, a couple weeks later, it's happening again, and this pattern was just recurring. And my wife sat me down, and I could tell she was quite. This is it. I could tell, like, in her eyes. My wife's a redhead, and she's got that tinge of ginger in her, and she's not one to mix words. Like she is very to the point and honest, and sometimes. I've always said, like, I know I need to hear that, but it might not be what I want to hear right now. And she sat me down, and I could tell, my kids were 4 and 6 at this time. And yeah, I mean, she looked at me, and it's like, we can't do this anymore. Me and the girls, we can't do this. And the conversation was starting to veer that way about us separating and getting divorced. And she asked me a question. She said, "Are you being the type of man that you'd want to marry your daughters?"
Yeah.
And that question, based on all the other questions that I was asking myself, that was the one that really created an instant impact in me. And I had to be brutally honest at that moment. And I was like, no, I would not allow any man that acts like I've been acting, for almost that last 10 years. To get anywhere near my daughters. So why am I being that man? And it was right then and there. I stopped drinking. No more substances. I sought out help, mentorship, found new association, and really started focusing on the inner work, getting to know who am I and what do I want and how do I want to make an impact on this planet, and that's what started that journey. And that's 10 years ago now. Lots happened in 10 years, of course. But every day I'm just trying to make impact in other people's lives to let them know there's always a choice. There's always an opportunity to do things a little bit differently if you really want to,
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that's really important because I think everybody knows that they have a choice, but I don't know if they truly know,
right?
If that makes sense, that they have a choice.
I think it does. Yeah. I think it's easier to say I don't have a choice, because then we don't have to admit, that change has to happen. It's like, well, it's out of my control, so it's okay. This is just the way it should be and the way it will be. And I can't accept that. But I know I've thought that way many times in my life, many times. And I just, you always have to ask yourself, is this true? Is this really the life I want? And is this who I want to be defined as or remembered as? Is this the kind of legacy I want to leave behind? It's like, no. Well, then why am I doing the things to make that so?
Yes.
And I mean, it's not easy though. I think the process is fairly simple. We don't have to overcomplicate it, but it's not easy. It's not easy. Yeah.
because it's constant, right?
Yeah.
So you take 2 steps forward, and it's literally 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. So, and sometimes it's 4 steps back. So,
Yeah.
but it's wanting to make the change, and then working towards that, even when you start to falter.
Well said. Well said. And it's remembering, it's people say, well, what kept you motivated? And I was like, initially I was motivated by my family, and that fear of not changing and what it might mean for my life. So yeah, it was a bit of fear-based initial motivation. But motivation wanes, just like willpower. You got only so much every day, every week, every month, every year, but if you can figure out the inspiration, because I find that capital in, that internal inspiration that is inside of us. Sometimes we have to dig it up. It might take a little bit of introspection, quite a bit of time of reflecting, maybe meditating. But if you can find that inspiration, that doesn't go away. It's there, whether you want to focus on it or not.
So what was your inspiration then? Like you said, your family started you on that path, but what kept you going?
Well, I started to like the results that were coming. And it wasn't just a physical. Obviously, there were some initial physical responses. I started feeling better. I started making better decisions as it related to nutrition and how I exercised, because my energy was improving. I was sleeping better, where I used to believe that, well, I'm stressed out at the end of the day, so I should have a half to full bottle of wine to get to sleep, and which is just, my sleeps were never very restful. And so I started to feel better. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing when you start to feel better and you realize how compromised your health has been based on the choices you've been making. I realized that, whoa, I don't want this feeling to go away. And you start to think differently. So it first starts as a feeling, but then it starts to thinking, and I started to change the inputs and the association. So whatever was going into my mind, the people I was interacting with, the things I was reading, the things I was watching, where I was spending my free time, I really started to question that, to say, well, if I want to be this type of man with these kind of core values that I say are my pillars, these are my truths, what kind of day-to-day will my life look like? Who are the types of people, the associations, the kind of things I might be doing that I want to be doing. And yeah, it's a challenge, but it's also a great adventure. And it might be 2 steps forward, 1 step back, sometimes 3 steps to the right, it's rarely a straight line.
Yeah.
And as hard as it may be, it's worth it. It's been worth it. Only because I can say to myself, I'm worth it. And I believe that. Where before it was always on others. But when you start to really go from that idea of we to me, this idea of, well, yeah, there is an ego. And unfortunately, it motivates us to do a lot of certain things that may not be the best things that are in alignment. And it's self-preservation and fear-based and all sorts of stuff. But when you can start to really learn to love yourself so you can maximize your love of others and the world and the planet and your contribution and impact and all these great things, it is a way easier decision-making filter for you. Do you know what I mean? Like it just, so I think that's really what it was. I had to learn to like myself first, and then actually, as far as say, love myself, as cliche as it is, it was really the path I did. And, I saw a counselor, I saw a psychologist for a while. I cut off all my old association. I had a lot of buddies that were drinking buddies.
Yeah.
And as soon as I stopped drinking, I was showing up still, I'd hang out with them, thinking that they're my friends, but they felt more awkward than I did. Right. They didn't know how to act around me. And so they stopped calling, and to be honest, I didn't call them either. I realized this new path might mean new association. And that one's tough, especially I have people often say, well, what if that association is your family? And I'm like, whew, that's a tough one. That's a real tough one. And I don't have an easy answer.
It is a tough one. And it's something that a lot of people, in fact, I was just talking to my daughter about this today, because her and I have kind of become this little island in our family that, nobody quite knows what to do with.
Why is that, do you think? Like, why? Like, what is their concern? Why?
I think growth and change is scary for other people. So as people become more true in themselves, other people maybe feel that they're more flawed or have, and then it's easier just to blame you for being different and not fitting in, and but when you have clear boundaries, yeah, people do tend to fall away that just are not okay with that and not used to you being this new way, or so yeah. But we were having that conversation today, and it was it's hard, but sometimes even with family, you need to do what's best for you. And yeah, so I'm assuming you deal with or help these men's groups, sort of help them do that. So have you had other people that have had those sort of issues with family as opposed to just friends? And I mean, it's hard with friends too, but
yeah, it's I work with men and women alike, but I tend to, I realize men's groups is not a regular occurrence where I'd like it to be that way. I'd like to know that every community has a group of men that are asking the hard questions of one another, but also there to support each other and not judge one another, and as men, I can throw some stereotypes out there, but yes, we are very closed off for the most part. And, when you meet new men, you're always sizing each other up, right? It's competition. It's just this bravado. And I've been guilty of that. I've lived that way for a long time. And so I like to be able to help chip away at some of those walls to show people that, you can be a man, you can be strong, but you can also be vulnerable. Brene Brown talks about it a lot, and I see some men connecting with that message, but not a lot of them, not at least in my circles. They love what she says, but then they don't practice that, and so creating a space for men to be open and share in that kind of capacity, it's pretty, well, for those that come to it, it can be life-changing, and but when it comes to that family piece, it's really hard. And it's again being true to what you want, and realize that what you want, others may not want that for you.
Yeah.
And because it's a mirror for them, they see what you're doing, and it's just, they have their own self-judgment that they're dealing with. So you have to remind myself, family, especially the people I have the closest relationships that know me best, or at least I would think so. If they can't be supportive of some of the positive changes I'm looking to make, I have to wonder why. And I just have to remind myself, that's them. That's their perception. That is their issue with whatever's going on in their life. Yeah. And I'm not doing anything to hurt them. And I just let them know I'm there to support them. If they ever want to talk about it and what's going on, I'm happy to do that. But this is what I'm doing, and this is why I'm doing it, whether you care or not.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
It's not easy though.
It's a tough place, but yes, I mean, that's ultimately what you have to do to be true to yourself, right? So, yeah. Sorry, I went completely not off topic, but I just threw in a couple of extra questions that I may not have, warned you about.
That's okay. This is just a conversation. I love it.
Okay, perfect. And so, what is your favorite creative healing modality for yourself?
Well, I really like visualization and meditation, and also just journaling. Like those would be the main ones. Like even exercise. Sometimes I find exercise very meditative. I can go and work out and just zone out and be in my own little world, and which is interesting. Physically challenging my body, but at the same time, my mind is sort of just in that space of thinking, visualizing, imagining, and I find that going through that process, it has this. It releases serotonin, and serotonin isn't naturally a feel good. And meanwhile, I'm also cranking my dopamine when I'm exercising, so I'm getting some good neurochemicals happening, right? These, and the happy chemicals, so to speak. Yeah. So I find that by doing those kind of activities, it definitely makes me feel more relaxed and in tune with where I am right now. And that's where meditation, I think, is really good. It's just that breathing, just focusing on the breath. And it's, listen, I wouldn't class myself as a meditation expert at all, but I am a meditation practitioner. I do take time to every day to meditate and reflect, and then from that set some intentions. So I would say that those for me are the habits that are, that would be the ones.
Okay. Yeah. And what would you say is your greatest accomplishment to date?
Wow. Well, I think it would be the fact that, I've got two beautiful daughters, 14 and 16. And I've been dating my wife for almost 20 years. So I would say that those are by far and away my biggest successes. What I would say are success. People often ask me, who are you? What are you about? And I'm like, well, I'm a dad, two beautiful girls, and dating my wife. And those, it's funny. People are like, well, what do you do? And I'm like, that's how I open up.
Mm-hmm.
Because I changed things a number of years ago when I said, well, what am I really focused on? What really matters most to me? And family kept coming up. So for me, those are my biggest successes. Yeah, I mean, you take everything else away, I always have my family. Like that's why I'm just like that's it. I love them to death. And as far as for myself, it's the ability to impact others, to realize that they can make a change at any time, and
Right.
they don't have to do it on their own. They don't have to be alone. There's communities, there's people, there's individuals out there that you can connect with that can help you. And I know sometimes that's the hardest part, is we feel very alone. As you said earlier, you and your daughter feel like you're on an island. That's not easy, but I'm sure you're connecting with a lot of like-minded individuals, even maybe online through Facebook groups and communities, and through your podcast, your listeners, right? Like you're creating an opportunity to connect with like mind. And sometimes you just got to put yourself out there to be able to find those people, to connect with them. And so I pride myself that I've been able to facilitate some pretty powerful communities, and I continue to do so.
Yeah, it's very true. I mean, that's one of the reasons I do this, right? Is because
Yeah.
of making those connections. But more so because I have been in really dark places myself, that for people to know that there are other ways, and there are people out there who understand and have been through tough things and have come out the other side. So that's really important.
It's so important. I mean, it's so
Yeah.
powerful that you're creating that safe spot for people, but also the resources, you're
Mm-hmm.
making them available, which is amazing.
Yeah.
I bet you feel really connected to that path, to wake up in the morning. The Japanese call it an ikigai, your ikigai, which is basically the reason you get up in the morning, it's a purpose. It gives life meaning. And when you're doing that stuff, it's awesome.
Yeah.
It's amazing how, as much as you might be depleting your energy, it's actually recharging you at the same time.
Oh, absolutely.
It's cool.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I fully believe that.
Yeah.
Yes. So if you could change one aspect of our society through your work, what would it be?
Just I'd like people to feel empowered that, their health is the foundation upon which life is built. Without health, you don't have life. It's like water. You can only go so long. But unfortunately, unlike water only takes a few days, and you'll notice that you need it really badly. Health is one of those resources that depletes fairly gradually, at least as we're younger. As we age, well, the half-life is not quite the same length, and that becomes a lot more sensitive to changes in our health too. Just we change how we exercise, how we eat, how we sleep, how we look after ourselves, and especially stress. I think stress is the big one. The World Health Organization says it's the epidemic of our century. It is. I could go off and off about all the stats, but bottom line is stress is largely can be managed effectively through lifestyle. And so my hopes is that I can empower people to recognize that they are worth the minimum amount of time and energy to keep them healthy body, mind, and spirit.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah. And what strength-based inspirational advice would you give to someone who's struggling?
When you say strength-based, I was wondering about that question. Like, how would you answer that for yourself?
Like it depends on the person quite often, but somebody like, it gets better. I've been there and I totally understand this period, but just know that there are better things on the other side. That's kind of my standard go-to when people are struggling. But I mean, I've had lots of different stories shared with me on sort of what people think gives them strength, and then how they would, share that with others.
I see. Thank you. Well, I think when it comes to, I know empathy is a powerful emotion, and it's unfortunately one that's not readily available like I feel it should be. But that power to envision yourself, as I say, in someone else's shoes, right? Living their life. What would that be like? What are the kind of struggles they're going through? And I think it's a great starting point. But realizing at any moment there's an opportunity to draw a line in the sand, and that line in the sand represents everything that's happened up to this moment. Everything, like everything that you've ever done and said and thought and reaction you've taken or you haven't, it's all brought you to this moment. And then as you visualize yourself stepping over that line in the sand, there's a clear path in front of you. And when I say a clear path, like it's as a what was his name, Rene Descartes, tabula rasa. It's a clean slate. You can walk wherever you want now and set the footprints. And I think it's really amazing when you visualize that and you realize, okay, even though I walked a certain way and lived a certain life up to this moment, it actually has no control over tomorrow. It has no control over my next step. It may influence it, but you still have to ultimately choose to walk it. And so for me, just remembering that, just that quick visualization, drawing a line in the sand, visualize yourself on the beach, you're drawing a line in the sand, you can hear the waves off in the ocean, and sun's on your face. It's beautiful. And this next step and the step after that, I'm making with full conscious awareness and purpose behind it. So yeah, that would be for me one thing that I do often when I find myself in a situation where I'm wondering, why the heck am I doing what I'm doing right now?
And that does come up on occasion, but then you're reminded of, how great it feels when you feel better, or when someone else tells you that, they feel better, or, with what they're going through. And yeah, that definitely helps.
Almost like I also visualize, Control Alt Delete. For those that remember the old PC days, and Control Alt Delete is hard reset on the computer. Well, I believe we all have a mechanism or an ability to create a habit or a behavior or a ritual around a hard reset for ourselves. And I often teach that to my clients, like, here's something that works for me, but of course it may not work for you, but you have to find yours. What helps you reset and get back into connection with feeling good, but thinking more positively. And for me, I know, I might be tired, so I haven't had a good night's sleep. I could be hungry. I also have a good, healthy meal. Do a little bit of meditation, maybe some stretching, maybe go for a walk. But these are just simple little things that are readily available at any time. And I know just doing those few little things, it starts to build the momentum I need to start making some of those better choices and start feeling better about myself. So I encourage you, what are those things that absolutely, that if you take the time to do it, and look for the healthy ones. It's really easy. I have some friends that say, well, I grab a tub of ice cream and put on my favorite Netflix show. I'm like, okay, well, but do you regret that after you've done it? And often they'll say, yeah, it actually made me feel better in the moment just because it helped me ignore what I was dealing with emotionally. But as soon as I stopped watching Netflix or the ice cream ran out, I was right back where I was. I was like, okay, well, ask yourself before you do that thing, would you regret doing that thing after you've already done it or not? And most people, they say, well, if I'm going to go for a nice walk on the beach, they're not going to tell me after I really regret going and walking on the beach. So it's really getting clarity around, well, what are those things, that I can do to make me start feeling better.
No, that's excellent. It's excellent. And do you have an inspirational quote that sums up your life journey?
Well, to take one from Mark Twain, and I think it's just a really simple quote, but I really like this quote. And it's, the two most important days of our life are, one, the day we're born, but two, the day we figure out why. And I think it's important for anybody, to figure out, why are you getting up in the morning? What's got you excited to get up? What is that sense of purpose or joy or fulfillment? Or as I said earlier, Joseph Campbell, what's the life you need to be living so you feel that you're following your bliss? And so for me, really getting clear on what brings me a great sense of purpose in life just made everything so much more enjoyable. Like just doing what I do, I have a lot more joy, a lot more happiness. And not to say that I don't have down days. Oh man, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm always coming back to, those internal inspirational motivations, if you will. And yeah, for me, I love that quote. And if people are like, well, I haven't figured out my why yet. Okay, well, there's lots of great resources out there and people. And, it's sort of something that you have to come to on your own. However, there's people out there that can mentor you and coach you and support you as you're figuring it out. But you have to actively say, okay, I want to figure this out.
Absolutely.
And,
Absolutely.
Yeah. So.
And is there anything else that you would like to share with us about you or any of, anything we've talked about today, anything like that?
I'm always available to connect with people. So really, if people are just looking to just quickly drop a quick hi, hello, or ask a question, just reach out. I'm really accessible. Facebook, Instagram, my blog. It's just my name's pretty unique. You just type in Dai Manuel on any of the social platforms or online, and you will find me. And I love speaking to groups and small and large, and I do a lot of keynoting and workshops, and I just love connecting people and helping them. So if people have heard this and they've heard something that tweaks them and they'd like to have a conversation, I'm always around, and at the very least I can help you get some clarity on maybe the next steps you should be taking. And it's probably not with me, but just knowing that have someone there that can help direct you a little bit, or make some suggestions, or ask you the questions to get you thinking about, oh, okay, you know what, I haven't thought about it that way, just to help you shift your perspective. Sometimes that is all it takes, right? And that's why I love that you create this, you've created this platform and this podcast, especially. You're sharing these different stories and snippets and ideas and wisdom. And sometimes that's all it takes, is hear one podcast. My wife, she wanted us to travel as a family, and for years was listening to different podcasts of different traveling families and their stories. And so she would drip on me and drip on me and drip on me. And but eventually it got to the point where I wanted that too, and it was neat to see that there was this entire community of people that have already done the things that we wanted to do. There's a lot of belief in that, and so, or at least it solidifies the belief that we can do this too. And so look for that proof and realize you can, you just can. So that's it. That's all. I got a free program if people want it. It's based on my book I wrote, and that's joinwlfm.com. You sign up and you get a daily workout with guided meditations and for personal and professional development. It's all included. Great community. It's no cost, no hidden agenda. That's it's just there. It's there for people to access, to leverage, to help them create some results in their life.
That's excellent. And we will definitely have those links up when you air, so that people have
Awesome.
Those links. Which will be great.
Yeah.
And I just want to thank you so much for doing this and, talking with me today. It's been great to hear your story.
I love that. Happy to share and promote that out, and really looking forward to our next conversation.
All right. Thanks so much, Dai.
Thank you.